Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. I'm Elizabeth McKeon, a board-certified psychiatric mental health and addiction recovery nurse. This podcast aims to bridge the gap between mental health and substance use discussions, fostering understanding and empathy while reducing stigma. Join us as we amplify the voices of those with lived experiences, creating a non-judgmental space for their stories to be heard. Thank you for tuning in.
Whenever I'm sharing my story and stuff, even though he has like a big piece of like me, because I was on my own like from 16 years old, like he just left me, you know. But I still am like super.
He's your dad.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course. I mean,
and we don't have a relationship really.
Yeah,
even now, but I'm just always like, you know, my family had a lot of dysfunction. There was substance use and mental health in my genealogy. I have genetic dispositions to it. I've also had a lot of trauma when I was younger. So there's a lot of, I call it the perfect storm.
Sean, so for our listeners who are listening to the blooper world, that was Sean, who always stays silent. And we always try to get Sean to talk, but he doesn't like to talk. Sean,
there is a fourth person on here.
Yeah, Sean, say hi.
Hey.
Thanks, Sean. I mean, you got to give yourself some credit.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
You're the
this
producer.
This is hard work right here.
This is the man that makes it happen.
Yeah.
Pow.
Pow.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Sean, I'm ready to roll. I'm going to do a did you know?
You're rolling.
Okay. Did you know that a recovery community organization, or an RCO, is an independent, nonprofit organization led and governed by representatives of local communities of recovery? These organizations organize recovery-focused policy, advocacy activities, carry out peer recovery-focused community education and outreach programs, and/or provide peer-based recovery support services. Now, that's a brief definition of what an RCO is. A little bit today, some of our podcasts will include a little bit more about an RCO. And so I have Brittany Rockmore here with me today, and I'm going to let her introduce. As you listeners know, Brittany has been a previous guest on the podcast, and today she is going to introduce today's guest.
So, hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is my really good friend, Kayla. She is doing a lot of stuff in Florida with different RCOs, so I wanted us to all get together so she can tell us a little bit about what she's doing, and so we can all make this full circle and come together.
Thanks.
Welcome, Kayla.
Yay. So, you know what? We're peer. No, I'm not a peer. You two are peers,
Yes.
but we're pod influencers.
Yes.
Yeah.
This
All
is
right.
good.
So welcome, Kayla. Welcome to the Clearly Well podcast. Can't wait to hear your story. I purposefully usually do not know. I certainly don't know the full stories of the guests. Sometimes I know a little bit about what they're going to say, but Kayla and I have just been getting to know each other this morning, and I purposefully asked her not to tell me a lot about her story. So here we go. Kayla, go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here. This is truly a full circle. Me and Brittany were driving over here, and I was like, can you believe this? Like, we're literally driving to go do a podcast about recovery, like me and you know, and if you guys haven't heard Brittany's story, you need to go back and listen to it, because she has definitely just been a miracle, and so is my life too, and so I'm just so grateful for that. But I'm so happy to be here with you all. Just a little bit about me. I am 31 years old. I live in Miami, Florida.
Just a mere baby.
Yes, but I don't feel like I'm a baby. I feel like I've lived a lot of years. I live in Miami. I was born in Miami, raised up in Miami until about 15 years old. And at 15 years old, I had like a really big change in my life. I moved to Rabun County. And so just a little bit of context and backstory.
Rabun County, that's in Georgia, correct?
Yes, Rabun County, Georgia. That little spot right there, Northeast Georgia mountains.
Appalachia.
Yes. And so that was about 16 years ago. Yeah. My parents are divorced, and both my parents remarried when I was younger. And, you know, now looking back, let me just say I'm in recovery. So that's
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
How long you been in recovery?
So August 20th will make 8 years.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of years in recovery.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. The journey to get there was a long and exhaustive one, but I'm so grateful to be here and really just to be on the other side of things, to say like there is hope and that people are still recovering, and the decision can be made at any point in time. It doesn't matter how far you've gone. And our stories are really a testament to that.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so I moved up to Georgia when I was 15 years old. When I look back on my life, I can look at like in my childhood that there was definitely some mental health struggles there. My family, family dysfunction. I don't think there's any perfect family in the world.
And that's one of my big topics. And I think on every single podcast is that there always 100% of the time is there a mental health co-occurring disorder with substance use disorder. So sorry to interrupt, but that's my little soapbox, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. I didn't recognize it then, but like the feelings of suicide, the feelings of being really depressed,
Oh, wow.
the feelings of like really just not, it was like deeper than just not fitting in, like I feel like every young person goes through a season of trying to discover who they are, like find their place in the world. And so I think that within that, young people are very vulnerable,
Yes.
As they're coming up, because they're really exploring all of that. And so if you don't have like the right guidance and the right supports, that can be a bit of a struggle. And especially if you have mental health challenges, because most of the time, and I know back then we didn't talk about it,
No, and I will say, I mean, I was raised in a really small town in the South, and I'm going to say I raised my daughter in out west. It was a big community and a big high school, big 5A high school. I did not see her come through the social traumas that I went through in high school in a small town. There is something about being raised in small rural America that can be really tragic for young adolescents. I think there's a difference, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. And when I was, so right before I moved up to Rabun County, I was kind of like going through different things in my adolescence. I mean, like I lost my virginity like way too young.
Okay.
And I always think back, like, like where did all of this kind of stem from? And like, why was it that at such a young age, I feel like my first drug was like a man, honestly. And when I think about it, because I just, I think the deep desire, and I think we all have this desire to like be loved.
Yes.
And so sometimes we're seeking for love in like all of the wrong places.
Yeah, that's such good insight, Kayla, like to say it in that way. I think a lot of people might be embarrassed to say that or to talk about how that can be intoxicating for young ladies.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's just really good insight and really good for our listeners to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my belief is that like your parents are like your first gods. Like they're your first, like, what you would think in all of like security, relationship, like all of these things that we seek to from flawed people, really, and it's like nobody could live up to that standard, obviously. But I think growing up as a young girl, there's a lot that happened within like my family unit that like crushed my spirit, or maybe even made me think that the way I saw relationships and things like that was a little bit distorted.
Skewed.
Yeah, skewed, yeah. Exactly. And so as a young girl, I felt like that was like one of my ways of seeking attention, was if I was going to get it from a man, and if they were going to like me, maybe they'll love me. And then I think I found that even with sex and like promiscuity,
right,
is like maybe that would add value to me. And I've started to find my worth in things like that. And so I noticed that like as a teenager, because I was way more concerned about the way I looked, makeup, how I dressed, wanting to, wear big cleavage bras, all of this stuff, like coming up in the world.
And a lot of that's very normal, I think. You know, there's a normal side of that too. But I think what you're saying is that we're taking that mentally to a level that was unhealthy.
Well,
Yes.
she brought the city up with her, because when we would be partying, they were in the woods, bonfires, gravel bar.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
and
do.
so she would have heels on and a skirt.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you brought the Miami to Rabin
I
County.
did. I brought the Miami. And so I think that's a piece of it too, right? Is there's like still like when you go to the city, there's like, it's a lot focused on like superficial.
Oh, yeah,
So
definitely,
I don't-
especially Miami.
Yes. So I don't think it's like all that, oh, this was just me. I think it's like the environment. Like there's so many different things that was forming, I guess, my view on the world and my view on myself. But anyways, when I moved to Rabin County, I was already struggling. I was already like, sexually active. I was already looking for ways to fill myself in unhealthy ways. And so I moved up here thinking, with my dad that my dad was moving from South Florida, and I was like, okay, this is my only chance to really be with my dad. And if he moves, then he's gone, and that's kind of, I guess, like the thought process that I had in my mind. And so I was like, I want to go with him. And I was already unhappy where I was at because I was going through my stuff. And I was like, okay, if I just leave, then everything's going to be better. If I'm with my dad, everything's going to be better. But I don't know if you guys know this, wherever you go, you take you with you. And so a lot of the things going on with me just kind of brought up here to Georgia.
Right.
But now I'm living like with my dad and his wife, and he has 3 other kids, and I start going to school, and I'm actually like really enjoying it. And I get like my first boyfriend, and I am like doing pretty good in school. And me and the boyfriend that I had were like sexually active, so I was still like young. When I think about it, I'm like, my gosh, like I was, sexually active at such a young age. And
what age was this?
15.
15.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, which to me is way too young.
It is.
So, and I was in love, or the thought of like love, but I think
You
it was,
were in love with being in love.
Yeah,
It's a cliche.
Exactly, all of those things. And so I can connect that now. But I started like hanging out up here. My dad, I didn't realize at the time, but he was having struggles, within his family unit and things like that. And so he ended up leaving to go back to Florida. And I was like, well, I want to stay, I want to be here. I was very like happy with everything going on. I was like, I can stay. I can go live with my friend who lives with this woman who was really nice, and she would take in kind of all the kids that really didn't have parents or homes. And so I was like, I
that's
can
so
live with her.
nice.
Yeah, she was very nice. And my dad said yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Which,
So
mistake number 1, I'm going to say.
yes, big mistake. I didn't see it at the time, obviously, because when you're a teenager, you just want to do what you want to do. So I was living up here, and it was not long. I was always hanging out with like older people, and like I was partying and doing things like that, but kind of typical, like you would think just, oh, when you're in high school, you party, you drink, you smoke a little weed, take a pill here and there. At least that's what I thought was normal, So those were kind of like the activities that I would partake in.
So that's not normal.
Which I know now.
Right.
But at the time in my life, everything that was happening, I thought was just like normal.
A part of the normal part of growing up and partying a little bit.
Yeah.
You're dabbling.
I was dabbling. Exactly. And I really enjoyed doing drugs. Like I enjoyed drinking. And I think what it is now, obviously that I know, is like, I just enjoyed being out of self.
Yeah.
And I think it was always about like how much fun you can have. And if you're a part of something and it's like exciting and things like that. And so I was chasing this high because every time that I was not under the influence and I had to deal with self, I would start to get those feelings that I talked about earlier, right? Where it's like, I don't like myself. I hate myself. I would feel like very depressed and sad. And I would question like my worth and like if I really belong. And I would even get suicidal thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and so I always would chase that next exhilarating high or adventure and things like that. And so yes,
you're really, you were depressed and it was unaddressed.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. When I look back now, and I didn't really know this kind of language, and like to articulate my feelings, which you didn't really do that anyways, like you weren't basically like, in my family culturally too, because I am also Hispanic. So mental health was not spoken about. You know, it wasn't really like something that we addressed. And I grew up Catholic, you know, but not really. It was very traditional. Like, you're Catholic because you're born of a Catholic family. You're
Same
gonna,
here.
yes. So
I'm also
you're
Catholic.
gonna. Oh, you are.
I
okay.
am.
So yeah, I'm a Reformed Catholic, but that's what I always tell people, because I didn't know God. You know,
Right.
I didn't know. I didn't know the grace and mercy of Christ. Like, things that happened later on in my recovery, which we'll get to. I didn't understand those things. I just knew, like, you know, you got to go get your first communion. You got to confess your sins. You got to do like all of these traditional things.
The pomp and circumstance of the Catholic Church, I have to say, I love about that church. You know, it is repetitive, though. That sort of the things that you have to do to, you know, to
Right.
be a good Catholic,
Right.
supposedly.
Right, exactly. And I have, you know, I'm not like bashing the Catholic
no.
Church, but
No, but
but
I get it.
For me, it was just, that was like my understanding, and like, God is a very punishing God, like all of these things, you know. And so I didn't feel like I fit into the
Got it.
church, you
Got
know. But so living up here, you know, and living on my own. So my dad leaves, and I'm living with this woman, and I'm living with two other people that go to high school with me, and then her two kids. And like this kind of, I think it was a 2-bedroom, let me see, 1, 2, I think it was a 2-bedroom house and a basement. And so at this point, I start, you know, kind of feeling like I could do whatever I want because I don't really have parental guidance. And I started to hang out with like the neighbor, like down the road. And she was like 10 years older than me. And I was like partying there. And it was like just like the party trap house. Like it was party central there.
Okay.
And so I'm living it up thinking like I'm having the best time ever, like all this stuff. But I don't realize is that like I'm slowly like moving down this path of addiction that's going to like essentially take my life down a whole other kind of pathway. And so I stopped going to school as much, and I'm now like working, I'm partying, I moved out of the one house to move in with this woman where every day is a party, you know, and there's like always people around, drug dealers, like other people doing drugs, all of this stuff. And at this point I was still thinking like, okay, just drinking, smoking some weed, taking some pills. Like I'm not doing nothing hardcore, like no hardcore drugs. And
this is a common theme. I think like I hear this from, I think every person on the podcast, that there's this voice in their head that says, I am better than because I have not done that yet.
yes,
And so that makes me different.
for sure. And in control. Like you think that you're in control. Like I literally thought I was in control of everything that I was doing. Like I am making these choices, you know, and this is what I want to do. And you know, like I just always felt like, and I would tell myself these lies of like, you're in control of all of this,
Right.
you know, and you can stop and if you wanted to, but you don't want to stop. So you're not going to stop. And I would just like have those conversations with myself. And then when I would not be on like drinking or, you know, smoking or doing anything, I would start to feel that depression, you know, those feelings would come back. So I feel like a lot of the time I put myself more into like doing drugs and partying and all that stuff because I thought that it was covering up those feelings. And then I had this moment of feeling like, okay, I belong, I'm accepted. All of these people love me. You know, we're having such a good time. These are my friends.
Where is the boyfriend at this point?
Oh, he comes. That boyfriend's gone.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we broke up.
Okay.
I
Oh,
was
okay.
not that much in love. So that, yeah.
Did
so
you kick him to the curb?
I did.
Now, was he not into what you were doing, and is that why?
He was not.
Okay,
he
well,
was,
there's that.
Yeah, like I started. You know, he was the first boyfriend when I came up, and then all of a sudden, when I'm partying and all this stuff, and all these other guys are giving me attention, I'm like, oh, we gotta get rid of him. We gotta get a new one. You know, it's about time. So when I'm partying at these places, and I'm with this woman who's like 10 years older than me, she's inviting like all these people over, and you know, I have me and like my teenage friends, and at this point I'm like 16, like going to bars.
Are
like,
you in a double life in a way, like between school and what you're doing at this person's house?
Yes.
I mean, I just had a flashback to Brittany, who was the cheerleader with the ankle brace on. Yeah.
Oh,
so
yes.
so I mean, this is kind of what I'm envisioning is like you're
yeah.
also living a double life.
You know,
Yes.
hang out
Well-
with the popular kids with, and they've got nice houses and all the things. And I'll be like, so yeah, you want to go and do this? And I'm like, absolutely not, And then I had my other set of friends. And
Got
then
it.
those cool friends didn't become so,
Like,
and then I
want
went
you
with,
around anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what was happening with you, Kayla? Were you sort of doing that same type of thing?
So yes and no, because I don't think I ever like living in Rabun County. I don't think I ever like made it to the point where I had like all these popular friends. Now I did have a friend group that I made like of these girls, and I'm still friends with them today. But they kind of knew what was going on. I think the double life would have been that I was like this straight A student coming into Rabun County. I was like this really smart girl. Like my mom's side of the family was like, she's gonna become a doctor, like she's so smart. Like I was always a high achiever, so really doing things that like I could be very goal driven and focus on like, if I get straight A's, like then I'm worthy, and I would just like work really hard at things. And so like goals and things like that, like I could do. And I felt like that kind of like tied to my worth as well, and so I would be like either. So I think that would be like the double life is like, I'm this like high achiever, but now I'm like doing all this stuff.
Right.
And so I was very good at covering things up because I could like articulate really well. I could present like
She didn't
I'm
look the part.
right. There you go. I didn't look the
That-
part.
I don't know what the part looks like though, because substance use disorder does not have
Doesn't discriminate.
It doesn't discriminate. There is no such thing. I mean, I literally had a lady tell me the other day, well, my daughter's really smart, so she would not have been doing
But those
drugs.
are the lies that we
And
tell ourselves. Like
And I'm like, well, I can't, but I it's so true. Smart. I'm sorry. Every single person that's been on this podcast is so smart.
yes.
They're so intelligent.
I say like people like my friends in recovery and like even my friends that are still unfortunately like stuck in addiction, like they're smart people. Like they're amazing, incredible people.
Exactly.
And so, but that's the lie that we tell ourselves, I think sometimes too, because I would cover things up and I would say like, well, you're still doing this. Like you're still doing that until those things started to disappear out of my life. Like I'm somebody who was like a straight A student, made all of these awards and achievements and whatnot, who then did not graduate high school, like kicked out of high school,
Right.
And so you look at that and it's like, okay, doesn't discriminate,
No.
Yeah.
By the
So
way,
I cannot do math. Do not ask me to spell anything. But like, if you want to talk grams and dollars, like I can tell you how many grams of weed go in a bag with or without the zipper. And I was like, I understand that and can remember that. So obviously I'll be good
Really
at this.
smart, right? No, but it's true. I'm a great. Listen,
but you're a mechanic.
she's a mechanic.
How in the world? I can't mechanic.
I can tell you the firing order for a Chevrolet, but I cannot
Do
sometimes
algebra?
the difference between angel and angle.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
you know how I now know I was good. I'm really good. I'm a business person. I was an entrepreneur. I was a drug dealer. Like
you were.
I was really good at it too. I I was building a business, Like
Yes.
I had more cash in my house than I've ever had, And it was
Yes.
like I was like, wow, like
I'm good at
I'm
this.
really good at this. Like I literally would tell myself like, this is really like you're making a living. Your kid he has got every kind of toy you could think of, like all of this stuff. You have money, and I thought that was like, I'm meant for this.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, I had a friend in Arizona who played women's professional football, and she was clean off meth, and she was the very first person I ever knew to be clean off methamphetamine, because that's just really, I used to think it was really rare. The statistics say it's really rare,
2%.
but it's supposed to be less than. And now I'm meeting more and more and more people, but her description of her life during the time that she was dealing drugs in Phoenix, Arizona, big city, she was driving a Hummer. Lived in a trailer, drove a Hummer that cost more than her house, but like literally her kids had everything,
Yeah.
But it's so true, and she thought, look at me go.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
literally how I thought, and I think that's like the rise up before the fall type of thing, because So when I was living with the woman that was older than me, that's who introduced me essentially to methamphetamines. And at first it was cocaine, and I did not want to do it because I was like, no, I'm good with like my drinking, smoking a little weed, popping some pills. Like I'm good with that, you know? And then
When you say you were popping pills, like what class of drug were you doing, or did it matter? I mean,
yeah, it didn't matter. Lortab, Xanax,
Okay.
Adderall. It was just like, what did we get our hands on type
Today,
of,
okay.
yeah, type of thing. And so,
up or downer didn't matter.
yeah, it didn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah. So she had laid out lines, and I was like, I'm not doing that, you know? And I didn't that day. I was like, said no. I said no to that drug, you know? And I was just like good doing what I was doing. But living there, it was like on a daily, like, hey, and it was like, come on, just try it. You'll really like it. You're going to be able, like, it'll get you sober, and then you'll be able to like go, you won't have a hangover tomorrow. Like just that peer pressure. So finally one night I was like, okay, let's do it. You know, I'm going to do it. And so I did it for the first time. I liked it. So then I was doing it. And then there was like a group of people there, and she laid out lines of white substance, and I thought it was the same thing. And she was like, yeah, no, it's the same that you've been doing. It's the same that you've been doing. But it wasn't. It was methamphetamines. And there's a difference when you're doing cocaine and you're doing methamphetamines.
I mean, for our listeners, both of these substances are uppers, but the cocaine I would just describe as a much cleaner version. And, well, no, it is. Methamphetamine is made with every
I done
substance.
meth first and then cocaine. So I was like, boring. Like, I'm trying to be up for days, you know, like.
Okay.
And then when I smoked
Yes.
crack, I was like, this is even what, you know, like, I was wondering, how do people function? Like, because I would sit down and smoke all the crack. Like, how do you get up and do anything? It's just awful. And so I was like, you can spend a little less money and get
Way
messed up
higher.
for 10 years.
For sure.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification, guys. I'm over here trying to be a nurse, and y'all are like, no, let us tell you what it's really like, because I really don't know.
But I didn't know. So I was the opposite for me, because I was like, you know, still in this like mentality of, I don't want to do like hardcore drugs. I seen my aunt, and she died of an overdose.
Of?
Meth. Like her heart stopped. Like it
Okay.
exploded. So like,
You know, I think when Sudafed got taken off the shelf and the DEA started, you know, checking in with your driver's license when you buy Sudafed, that changed the mechanism for methamphetamine. It became such a dirty drug. You know, it's made with, you know, it's made with every substance from Drano to chicken wire, and, you know, so it's spray paint. Like,
Well, you know, the aunt she's talking about, what was so awful is she already struggled with mental health stuff.
Bad.
And then she lost a baby, and
Yeah.
she never really did come back from that.
No.
And it was she was so beautiful and so smart, and just losing that child was awful for her, and she never did come back from it.
no. And and that's why I say, like, with my family, like, there's a history of mental health and substance use. Like, that's the aunt that we're talking about, and she was so beautiful, like, and her struggle was always mental health. Like, that was her deep struggle, and obviously it led to her condition of, like, drugs, you know.
this is the one that died. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. It was really sad because my nephew, or my cousin, it was my cousin, but we were actually, she had him while I was pregnant. So like he would sleep on my belly while Cooper was in my belly, because we were both like we were sleeping on my dad's couch together, because we would like struggle, and then me and her would find ourselves like in the same kind of space. But yeah, so back to the methamphetamine cocaine situation. I did not know that I was doing methamphetamines for the first time that I did them. And so I had kind of like this opposite effect of you, where you were like, you know what you're doing, this is boring type of thing. It was like when I did meth for the first time, it like scared me. It scared me because I was like out of my mind. Like I was used to a cocaine high, and then it was like,
Whoa.
just whoa. And back then, I mean, you literally would be up for weeks off one line. Like, so that was something that was just insane to me.
See, I don't think I really knew that. I've always been told by my
Well,
patients.
what you were just saying about the Sudafed and stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
so like 14, 15, 6, below 18 years old for me, it was a lot better. Like it's what you wouldn't call like bathtub dope. It was made with like anhydrous and Sudafed and stuff, but you couldn't get your hands on that stuff anymore. So like the quality really kind of decreased, but just she's saying like a little bit, and I was like, am I ever gonna sleep again?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd
Is
be
it
up like
the
2 days.
Is it the new version of meth that started being made after Sudafed was sort of off the market?
Well, I would just say
Unless-
watered down, if you will, like taking like lithium strips from batteries and making it in a bathtub. Like,
And how in the world, knowing that, I always wonder how, if you know what's in it, that you could put it in your body.
it's
But like
awful.
for you, just said like you didn't know.
Yeah, no, I didn't. But now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't have done it eventually, you know,
Right,
but I'm
right.
just saying in that moment, I did not know. But what was interesting is the new boyfriend that comes into my life was in that same room at that time, and he was the one that was chopping out the lines, and he was the one who looked at me and was like you've done, like, you know what this is, you know what, you've done this before. And that's when she came in and was like, no, she knows, she's been doing it with me. And so he knew after the fact that she lied, you know, about
wow.
it. And so, because he would have never like cut that out for me. So of course I fell in love with him because I was like, he saved me in he saved me in
so
the trap house. I
amazing.
said he came in on his white horse, you know, and just rescued me out of this house where I was being exploited.
Lord.
And I really was being exploited though.
No, and that's not funny. I mean, I appreciate that you can laugh now.
Well, yes, yeah.
And it's also insight, you
Yeah.
know, to be able to look back at your frame of thought in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so she liked the guy that was chopping out the lines. I did not. I didn't really care for any of the people. I was I was hanging out, having a good time, but I wasn't like, you know, liking anybody. But essentially I started spending time with that person because we kind of bonded a little bit, and then
he saved you.
Yeah, he saved me, exactly. And so he ended up becoming the person that I would fall in love with, like, and I'm talking like the love of my life. Like, I've never fell in love with anybody as much as I've loved this man. And unfortunately, when we got together, we were both in really bad places in our life. So you take two really broken people that are just completely troubled and you put them together, and it's just ingredients for a disaster. But we loved each other. And so I ended up leaving that house and kind of like moving in with him into his like camper at the time, because he was like maintenance or oversight of like a campground. And so I would just kind of go from house to house at this point. And I was 16. I turned 17 that summer. So then I would be starting like my senior year. But at this point, school had kind of started to like take that downhill, because like I said, I would like go when I wanted to, not go. It just was like, it was my choice to go. And if I got up and said I want to go to school, then I'll go to school. If I didn't have a reason to want to go to school, then I wouldn't go to school. And so most days I didn't go to school.
And what does that look like when you get to school and you haven't been to school for a while? What does that look
Where
like?
you been?
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting, and I think this is why I do the work that I do so much, and I focus so much on the youth as well, because I think about all of the places where there could have been like an intervention or somebody that would have been like, okay, Kayla hasn't been to school in a pretty long time. When she's showing up, she's either like sleeping the whole day or she looks disheveled, like something's going on, you know, and I just don't feel like that had really happened, you know, and it's almost like a blur for me, is because like I barely did go to school. It got to the point where I remember one day I went to school and I got called into like the counselor's office, and she was like, look, you've missed too much school. You can't graduate. And I was like, what do you mean I can't graduate? And she was like, no, you've missed way too much school. You can't graduate. And I pretty much got like kicked out that day of school. So then I
Same
was
thing
just
for me.
Yeah, I was just
Well, I
like,
remember thinking to myself, I've got bigger things going on. I work at a full-time job at a bar, but I, pay for all my own stuff, my vehicle, and I got bigger stuff going on than school.
yes, me too.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
grown.
Who needs school?
Right, I'm working. I have to work. I make my own money. And honestly, to be honest with you, most of the time I would be like out in the woods and like all night long. So I like would look really rough. Like I didn't want to go to school. I had my other best friend, I hope you get to meet her one day. She's in recovery too. She would actually come try to find me. She cared about me so much. And at this point she was not messed up on drugs. She was still just like partying like a regular high school student because that's what we thought was the normal.
It's true. I mean, I think, I don't know. It's, as I also advocate for youth, I try, you want to sell the fact that no drugs are okay, vaping's not okay, alcohol's not okay, all those things are not okay. But at the end of the day, I think it is probably pretty normal that kids are probably going to drink a little bit. And they're probably going to smoke a little weed. And then how is there that defining moment where as an adult or a counselor or as a mother that you have to differentiate between what is normal?
Yeah.
Because it's really a skewed line. It's gray.
But that's why I believe more so in not like this whole don't do drugs, just say no. Because that would have never worked for me.
No.
Everything that I did was underneath that.
No, I mean, I grew up, my daughter, let me go back up. So I grew up in a household where, my mom and dad drank.
Yeah.
We were Catholic. Catholic church is a little boozy. Let's face it.
100%.
So I kind of grew up with that was just normalized behavior. So my parents were also very strict. So when it came time for me to raise my daughter, I tried to be the very involved parent. So I did the Girl Scout leader. I was a coach. I did all the things. Tried to always have kids in my house. I can remember that I became the cool mom, right? And I remember my daughter came to me senior year and said, can we have the prom party at our house because we have the perfect spot? And that's where I became uncool. I said, absolutely not. That involves teenage drinking and driving from my house. Nope, not happening.
Yeah. Which is a good decision because I will tell you that in high school, I hung out, like my friends' parents were the people that I was doing and selling drugs with.
Yeah,
so
I can see that.
It's pretty, when I think about it, like literally like my friends, and some of them did know and some of them didn't know, but I would like sell dope to their parents and party with their parents.
I remember doing that a few times, and then taking a second to look around and seeing somebody that's in my grades high school picture on the wall, and I'm like, oh, they're like, yeah, my daughter is my son, and I'm like, yeah, oh boy,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember like knowing their kids and like they had them having no idea,
Them having no idea. Yeah.
no idea. I mean, of course, I wouldn't turn around and
No,
say
me
anything,
neither.
but just me like knowing them and them, they're known for the parents that have good jobs and they got a lot of money and their kid drives a cool car and they're not in the they're not even at the bonfire thing at the weekend, and then looking at it and being like, oh, that's your daughter.
Yeah. I mean, the equivalent of that for me, I guess, growing up in a small town and kind of like, I remember that some of the cooler parents like to weirdly hang out with us, which I thought was a little bit strange. My girlfriend, I had one guy friend and a girlfriend went to Daytona Beach senior year spring break, and one of these couples showed up at our hotel to party with us. Like, that's really random.
Yeah.
And granted, we weren't doing anything other than like drinking, but at the end of the day, there is a weird culture of parents that I guess feel like they're missing their youth and they're trying to hang out with kids.
Right.
It's
and I think
actually,
sometimes they think like, oh, well, if I'm hanging out with my kids doing this, then I'll have a better eye on them or something.
At least
I don't
they're
know.
drinking here
With me, type of stuff. I don't,
there was a group of parents that did we're going to take your keys if you guys are going to be drinking at our house. And so the keys are going in the room with us.
Yeah.
Still, though, they were really advocating for drinking at their home.
Yeah.
So not. I thought it was really cool at the time. Not cool looking back.
No, for sure. When I was younger, I thought it was cool too. I was like, oh my God, these are like the coolest parents, ever. But it's it's a dangerous thing, it's a really dangerous thing. And now being a parent, I'm like, there's no way. Like,
Right.
no way. And obviously because of my lifestyle and my son's father, so we will not be those cool parents. But I'm okay with that. But yeah, so, at that age, at 16 and 16, 17, like I was hanging out with people like twice my age. I was in bars, like I was dating people older than me. Like it was just, I was always that young person with all the older people, all the adults. And so I literally thought I was grown, and you couldn't tell me different, And so I was a very rebellious teenager. I mean, even when my parents did try to control me because things would get out of hand, because I started getting into criminal activity, I got involved with like a federal investigation. I was involved with like all these different criminal stuff, and I was doing
like criminal stuff, like what?
Like robbing places, guns, drugs.
Wow, okay.
Like pretty hefty things. And then the people I was hanging around were also doing things that sometimes I would get linked with that I was not actually there, but it was because I was within this group. Right. So there's times where I was there's times where I wasn't there, but because I was within this group, I was involved in that. But the thing about me was I was a minor. So at the end of the day, like, when an investigation would happen, like I would have to go to the police station, whereas people that are over the age of 18 wouldn't, because if I didn't go to the police station, then that's when my dad would, like, the police would call my dad, and he'd be like calling me like, what the hell did you do? Like, the feds just raided my campground. Like, what's going on? Get your butt to the police station right now. And so I was like, no, I'm grown. Like, I'm living on my own. He's like, I will put out missing whatever person. And he's done that before when I was younger, to where like anybody over the age of 18 around me would like get in trouble. So now I'm like, I don't want to get any of my friends in trouble. We're all doing, wrong. So it was just crazy. So I would go to the police station, go through that process of things. I had gotten arrested for underage consumption a couple times. Like, I had already been arrested like 3 times under the age of 18. And then I was dating that guy who I fell in love with, and I was like not going to school. My best friend would like try to go find me. So now the school like kicks me out. I am just completely strung out. I'm strung out on meth at this point. I am like selling dope, like hanging out at the bars, in this like very toxic relationship. And we go through this big kind of criminal thing that was with the feds, and that was like a huge like breaking point in my life, because my boyfriend at the time ended up going to jail and then taking the full like rap of everything and getting like a 3-year prison sentence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And at this point, like, I was just completely like broken and shattered, and my dad didn't know what to do with me. So he was like, I'm going to ship you off to Florida, because what would happen is like, I would kind of like burn my life down here, and then I would like go to Florida because my mom lives in Florida. And then I would try to like start something up there, and then kind of like burn it down, come here. And so it was just like these geographical changes, thinking like, my parents were like, what do we do with her? So at this point, I'm at my dad's, and all my friends are graduating high school. And all of this just happened, like this whole big thing. My boyfriend is in jail. I know he's not getting out. Now we are my dad's like, I'm going to send her. She's getting on a plane tomorrow. I'm driving her down. I can't remember. He was going to send me on a plane or something. And so my friends beg him. They're like, can she please come to our graduation? Please, can she come to our graduation? And so my dad was just like, fine, go, And so I was like really happy. So I was hanging out with them. And these were like my high school friends. So they were like my age. And so we were all hanging out. I'm like getting ready with them. I'm going to watch them graduate. We're going to go to a party after. And so they graduate. We go to a party. We're drinking. And we leave, and we get like the one person that hasn't been drinking to drive us, but that person may not have been drinking, but they were on drugs. And so what ends up happening is it's raining and the roads are wet, and we get into a car wreck. And there's like all of us are like piled in my friend's car. And so the car wreck was pretty bad, and some of us got really hurt. and one of the persons that got really hurt was me. And so I was like bleeding out of my face. Like I'd broken my nose. Still have a scar right here. And a friend of ours was following from behind, and he like seen our car wreck. And so he stopped and he got us in his truck. And it was like a 3-seat, like, so it's like only a 1 row. So there was a lot of us. So he threw us, we were in like the bed of his truck, and it's raining, pouring down rain, and we're like bleeding. I was like bleeding all over. And so he's driving fast because he's like nervous. You know, obviously like the cops are going to come. We know all this stuff. So I'm sliding across the bed of the truck. Like blood is everywhere. I'm like scared for my life because I'm like, I'm going to freaking slide right out of this bed of this truck. He's flying down the road, and he takes us to one of our friends' sister's house, like right there in town, you know. And we like... It's so crazy. We are like getting out, like carried out of this bed of this truck. I have like, I'm covered in blood. I probably look like, what's that girl, that movie with
Like
the
Carrie?
pig? Yes. And my friend's sister comes out, and she's freaking out, and like everyone's big and crying and screaming.
I have to stop you for a minute. So what you guys don't know as listeners is Kayla's in like one of those rocking desk chairs, and as she's talking, she is rocking, and so you're hearing like the rocking chair go back and forth because she is into the story, man. So I just, you know, it's podcast. They can't see what you're doing over there. You're so animated right now.
This is
this is a good story.
Okay. All
yes,
right, keep going.
yes.
So
Okay,
you're a bloody mess.
So yes, and I am rocking. Okay, so I'm a bloody mess, and they're like, they have to go to the hospital. Like they have to go to the hospital. We cannot leave them here. And so they make the executive decision to take us to the hospital. Oh, I forgot to mention, a few of us are already on probation at this point. So that was kind of why we were not trying to stay with the car wreck. So we end up going to the hospital, and the hospital admits me. I'm like now hooked up to all this machines. It's like all very foggy to me, but I remember just like kind of opening my eyes, and like I'm in the hospital bed. I can hear doctors kind of talking.
I'm sure
They're
you had
hooking
a
me up to
concussion.
things. Oh, for sure. I broke my nose. I mean, it blacked my eyes. And I just hear them say like, we can't x-ray or something like that. She's pregnant. And I'm like what? It felt like a nightmare. Okay. That I was like waking up from
So
a
you
dream.
didn't know you were pregnant?
Oh no, I did not know I was pregnant at all. And so then I find out in that hospital bed that I'm pregnant. And so now I'm pregnant with a child of the man who's now sitting in jail going to prison.
Okay.
And I had been completely strung out on meth, you know, using up to that point. I was drinking that night. I just wasn't keeping track of my period. I was obviously very like irresponsible, you know, with regards to that. I wasn't thinking like, you know, protection and all of these things.
Right.
And so from that point in that hospital bed, I just remember being like, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I'm just going to wake up from this. But I didn't. And so the next day when I was leaving the hospital, because there was cops, they brought the cops in. And so the cops were like, once you discharge from the hospital, you will go to jail. And we were going to jail for drinking underage and the whole like wreck and everything. So from the hospital, I turned myself into jail, and my dad bonded me out. And at this point, I had like my face, I had 2 black eyes, like my nose was broke from that, and I was like busted up. And so I got out of jail, and I just remember feeling like although I didn't really like know God. I didn't have this relationship with God, but I felt like being pregnant was like a God thing.
Right.
Yeah, like I felt like it was a God thing. And everyone in the world would have said like, this girl cannot have a baby. You know, I'm 17 years old, like don't have nothing now, high school dropout, strung out on drugs, just got rearrested. This girl should not have a baby. But I just knew in my heart, like, I am going to have this baby. And I remember being so scared that like he wasn't okay because of everything that had happened. And I went to the doctors, and I just like told them, like, everyone was like, is he okay? I didn't know it was a he, obviously, at the time. But I was like far enough along to where I got to hear like his heartbeat. And I just remember being like, I'm going to stop everything and I'm going to change my life. And this was the love that I had been searching for my whole life. And I'm going to love this baby and this baby's going to love me and it's just going to fix everything. And I just like my son was just this gift. I just felt like it was this gift. Now, other people in my life did not feel that way. And I understand why, because looking in, they're like, she's a child, like everything that she's gone through, she should not have a child.
Right.
And so I was asked to abort my son.
By who?
My mom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I understand why she did.
Yeah, and I mean, in theory, she might have thought he can't be okay with what you've been doing.
Yeah. So I understand it now, but at the time I was like so angry. And I was angry at I was angry at everybody. So I blamed everybody for my problems. I was not willing to like look at self. And I was so just mad at the world. But I just thought like my son was going to fix everything, and honestly, like he gave me enough willpower to just like stop everything, to like I got my GED that summer. I like passed with like flying colors, that they were like giving me a scholarship for school, like because I was just driven again back to going through like, okay, I'm going to just high achieve and do all these things. I saved up money. I was working and I like saved up all this money to get us like a nice double wide trailer. And I was like so excited for him to come and like just to be a mom. But I was a child raising a child, and I had not yet dealt with all of that underlying mental health, all of the trauma, because my adolescence was filled with a lot of trauma, like a lot of violence, a lot of different types of abuse. Like there was a lot of things that I never dealt with because I was just like moving through life. And some of that was brought on by the lifestyle that I was living, but you just kept going, and I would use substances at this point to kind of like numb that as well.
Right.
And then just forget about it.
So now you're 17?
Yes. And so I found out I was pregnant at 17, and then my birthday was like a month or 2 months later at 18 years old.
Okay. So
We're
for
the best of friends. You'll meet him one day, but
Aw.
And he, his mom and his dad kind of live in the lifestyle. I wouldn't say like really sheltered, but he was like a little thug growing up, and they were just like, when you seen Kayla, you seen Cooper.
Yeah.
And they were the best friends.
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
Still are.
So, but
Still
you
are.
spent from 15 to 18. You really didn't have time to process anything.
Nothing.
Because you were pretty messed up for
Pretty
3
messed
straight
up.
years.
100%. And messed up, and now there was like even more to process. So there might have been stuff before 15 that I needed to process, but now from like 15 to 18, there's like a lot that has happened within that short time span.
So also I would think that, when you get sober, it's my understanding, and I've read a lot and heard other people talk about what that's like when all the real raw emotions come flooding back, because you have to deal with that in a sober state. You're also pregnant. So, okay, we're going to wrap up episode 1 with Kayla, and please tune in next time for episode 2, where we're going to talk about the rest of Kayla's story. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I want to state that please do not substitute this podcast for professional therapy or treatment. The content shared here is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We do ask our listeners to respect the diverse experiences of individuals and refrain from passing judgment. If you or someone you know needs professional help, please seek the guidance of a registered and qualified mental health professional. Clearly Well is brought to you by Healthy Georgia and produced by CNC Media.